Hello everyone, my name is Gianna and I have been a Java developer for more than a decade. In this video, I will do a quick comparison between Java and .NET. Hope you will enjoy it. Let's get to it. The way that I'm approaching this video is that at first I will give you a brief history about .NET and Java, and then I will compare execution models and other features together. After that, I will show you a sample project for each of these technologies, and then I will conclude this video. Okay, let's start with a brief history about .NET. .NET's first few versions were called .NET Framework, and it was created by Microsoft as their response to the increasing demand for enterprise applications. Before that, Microsoft dominated the world of desktop applications, but as companies grew in size and wanted to have applications that work better within their network, simple desktop applications were not adequate enough anymore. So software companies wanted a platform to make that kind of applications, and Microsoft was falling behind technologies like Java. So they created .NET Framework. .NET Framework would only work on Windows servers and machines because Microsoft still wanted to have monopoly in that area. But it didn't work that well for Microsoft, and after a few years, .NET Core replaced .NET Framework to support other environment and other operating systems like Linux as well. .NET Core is a platform to create applications for desktop, web, or mobile, and you can have multiple languages using .NET. You cannot have one project with multiple languages, but you can create different projects for different languages, and they all use .NET Core as their main environment. Microsoft decides what and when to add to the platform because Microsoft owns .NET Core. And finally, .NET Core has two main frameworks, WPF for platform independent applications and WCF for client-server applications. So now let's talk about Java. Java started as an internal project in Sun Microsystems, and after a few years, Oracle took over. Java started as a four-part platform based on Java language as a set of cross-platform tools. First, Java Card for smart cards. To be honest, I'm not sure if they're still around. Second, Java SE or Java Standard Edition. They are used for desktop applications, but maybe we can call it the core part of Java platform. Java ME or Mobile Edition, or sometimes called Mini Edition for mobile applications. Java ME is not used anymore because modern smartphones, they have their own tools and technologies, and Java ME is not suitable for new and modern smartphones. And lastly, Java EE for enterprise applications. Java EE, or previously called J2EE, is a set of specifications. It doesn't have any implementation, and third-party companies, they add their own implementations in their own libraries, and they can either sell it or make it available for free. After a few years, Oracle delegated the maintenance of Java EE to Eclipse Foundation, and it was renamed to Jakarta EE. Java EE and Jakarta EE, they are usually compared to something called Spring. Spring started as a framework, but it became very popular and grew, and it can be called a platform itself. However, newer versions of Spring, they are said to need Jakarta EE specifications to run. I have to mention that Spring is also a bit more lightweight than Jakarta EE. Java applications can use a wide variety of frameworks in different layers, like Hibernate for accessing data, and you are not bound to use only one framework in your application. Changes to the platform are proposed in the form of a Java specification request, and Java Executive Committee either approves or rejects these JSRs. And if they are approved, they can be included in the next versions of Java. Now let's have a look at the execution model of these two technologies. I'm not going into details of the execution models because it can get very complicated. It's just an eagle-eye view. For .NET, we have .NET Core, and anything that ends with .NET, for example, C#.NET, ASP.NET, F#.NET, they all use .NET Core libraries to implement the features. After the application is developed, the compiler for each of the languages, for example, the compiler for C#.NET, they generate something called assembly.il. And when the application is deployed on the server or on the client's side, something called CLR translates the assembly.il code to machine code. CLR is .NET Virtual Machine. It doesn't care how the assembly.il code is generated, it just translates it to the machine code. For Java, it's a little more complicated. We have Java SE, Java Core, Java ME, and Jakarta EE. I've also included Spring in this diagram because I believe that you cannot talk about Java without talking about the Spring. When the application is developed using Java platform, the Java compiler will generate something called bytecode. Then when the application is deployed on the client side, JVM, which is Java Virtual Machine, it translates the bytecode to the machine code. Now we have a set of languages that are called JVM-based languages. They also generate bytecode, and JVM doesn't care how the bytecode is generated. As long as there is a bytecode, it will translate it to the machine code. The difference is that, for example, Kotlin is created by Google, Scala is created by another company, and they are not under Oracle like .NET applications. JVM-based languages, they can use Java SE libraries or they can have their own libraries. Let's go to other features. Both Java and .NET, they can run on a standalone. The only exception is that for Jakarta EE applications, you need a separate runtime and you cannot run them on a standalone machine. .NET uses IIS as its web server for its web applications, and for Java we have a wide range of application servers like WebLogic, Tomcat, etc. As you mentioned before, .NET doesn't need any additional runtime to run its enterprise applications, but Java needs something else like Glassfish. For example, if you want to use JPA specifications to create and update your objects in database, and you need to create a data source and data connection pool, you will need something like Glassfish to create that data source for you and to attach the data source to your application. As we mentioned before, .NET has a concept of CLR for its virtual machine, and Java has JVM for its virtual machine. They both can support multiple languages. It doesn't mean that in one project you can have multiple languages. It only means that their CLR can translate the bytecode over the assembly IL that is generated by different languages. .NET is created and maintained by Microsoft. Java is maintained by Oracle, and it's under Java Community Process. Jakarta EE is maintained by Eclipse Foundation, and Spring is created and maintained by Pivotal Software. .NET is completely free. Java development kit from version 11 onward. It's not free for commercial use, but alongside JDK, we have another implementation of JDK, which is called OpenJDK. They are both from Oracle. OpenJDK is free. However, if, for example, if there is any security patch that needs to be applied to the JDK, it might not be applied to OpenJDK. So for very sensitive applications, for example, for banking applications, it is not recommended to use OpenJDK, but most startups use OpenJDK. As we mentioned before, Jakarta implementations, they can be free or they can charge the users based on the implementation, based on what the company decides. Spring, however, is completely free. They both generate cross-platform applications. So you can write an application in Windows and run it in Linux, for example. The deliverable of .NET applications, it's usually .exe, but you can publish your web application to IIS directly. For Java, it depends on the type of your application. It can be Java archive, it can be web archive, or sometimes enterprise archive. If you use Spring Boot, it's always Java archive. In order to develop applications in .NET and Java, you need something called IDE. For .NET, Visual Studio is the most popular IDE, but we also have things like DevExpress, Rider, etc. For Java, we have Eclipse, IntelliJ, NetBeans, etc. Some of the IDEs are completely free. For example, Eclipse is free, but others like Visual Studio and IntelliJ, they have a community edition and enterprise edition. The community edition is usually free to use, but the other versions you have to pay for them. They are both open source, and you can find .NET and Java source on GitHub. .NET and Java platform, they are concepts. We need something, some kind of implementation for these concepts. .NET uses SDK, Standard Development Kit, as its core implementation. For Java, it's JDK. Both .NET and Java, they both have short-term support releases and long-term support releases. For .NET, they release a short-term support version every 2 years in even numbered years, and long-term support versions in odd numbered years. For Java, they release the short-term support versions every 6 months, and the long-term support every 3 years. Both of these platforms support their long-term support versions for 3 years. If you want to use a third-party library, you need something called Package Manager. For example, if you want to open a CSV file in your .NET or Java application, someone probably has made a library for it, and you don't need to write the whole thing by your own. So if you want to use a third-party library for .NET, you can use NuGet, and for Java, you can use Ant, Maven, Gradle, etc. Ant is for legacy applications, and it's not being used in modern applications. The solutions in .NET, they use namespaces to package their application, and for Java, they use packages. For .NET applications, we use camel case with capital C at the beginning, and for Java, we use camel case, but for lowercase c at the beginning for method names and variables. For class names in Java, we use the same camel case with uppercase, just like .NET. Now let's have a look at two applications in Java, one with Jakarta EE and one with Java Spring. For Jakarta EE application, I created a Maven application, and I added my source code, one model, one EJB service, one REST API, and then I added my persistence XML file because it doesn't have any in-memory database. Then I went to Wildfly website, downloaded the server, and when I downloaded that, I came here, added a new server, added Wildfly 27 because that's the version that I downloaded. It downloads the connector first, and then you can create a local server. After you downloaded the connector and I added the local server, I went to Wildfly XML files and added an admin user, and then ran the server and logged into the console using the admin user that I just created. After that, I copy pasted the sample data source that Wildfly creates for us because, to be honest, at that point I was a bit lazy, so I just copy pasted this, and after that I can use this application. So as you can see, it was a bit of work to set and run Jakarta EE application. But for Spring, it was easy. I went to Spring Initializer. I added the dependency. For Spring, it was very easy. I went to Spring Initializer website, added the dependencies that I wanted to use. I said I want to create a Maven project, and it gave me a zip file. I opened the zip file and imported the project in my Eclipse. And as you can see, I added the application, the model, controller, everything. I didn't need to add anything else. And that was everything I needed. So that was for Java. So now let's talk about .NET application. For .NET application, I just needed to add ASP.NET template. It was about 8 gigabytes of data. It took a few minutes to download and install. After that, I created a new project from here, from File menu. And when I created the project, it added a lot of samples for me. For example, weather forecast controller, also a lot of HTML files. I'm not going to use them, but I just kept them for your reference. I added the controller, I added the context, I added the model, and that was it. That was all I needed to do. It also created an HTTPS format for me. I didn't use it, but you can use it. That's very simple to use. What I need to do now is just go here and click run. So that was it. That was 3 projects in 3 technologies, 2 Java based and 1 .NET. Now let's go back to the slides and conclude our video. So in conclusion, I would say both platforms are robust platforms and they have everything that the developer needs to develop a good application. .NET is owned by Microsoft and developers are almost limited to what Microsoft has to offer. You can have third-party libraries, but it's not as nearly as popular as Java libraries. For Java, it's quite the opposite. Almost everyone can participate in adding a library, or a lot of people can add JSRs to add a feature to Java platform itself. And sometimes it can get confusing. For example, for everything that you want to do, you will have a countless number of libraries that you can choose, and you don't know if you can trust those libraries or not. Setting up Spring application, I would believe that is the easiest, then .NET, and then Jakarta E. You can argue that .NET and Spring are almost the same, and I would agree with that. Spring and .NET, they both have in-memory databases, and it makes it a lot easier to quickly set up a new project and start working on your new project. However, Jakarta E needs significantly more effort to set up, as we saw in sample projects. Although .NET needs to download gigabytes of data for the first time that we want to use a template, but it's just the first time, and for the next projects, you don't really need to do anything. Final project configuration, and I mean final packaging, it heavily depends on how you develop and design your application. But I believe that Spring Boot is the easiest, as it's just one jar file. Then .NET, you can have sub-projects for your services, for your model, etc. And for Jakarta E, it can get very complicated, as you might end up having 3 different packaging for your EJBs, for your web application, and for other libraries that you have. The efforts that needed to maintain an application, I would say it completely depends on the design of your application, but I personally believe that Spring is less likely to become unmanageable. Details like syntax differences should not really matter to a developer unless one language has something that the other language doesn't have, and your whole project depends on that feature. I personally haven't seen such thing, but it's a small probability. Uh, Maybe you have a very special project. Other than that, there is no reason that the developer should not be able to work on either of these platforms. The end user should not really feel any differences if you, for example, change from one platform to another, unless you change, for example, from a Microsoft desktop application to a web application. Other than that, your end user should not know or feel what happens in your backend. So yes, that's it. That was a quick comparison between .NET and Java. Here are some of the references that I used to create these slides. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.